right. Welcome back, everybody. We're happy to have another installment of a very successful symposia regarding teamwork, and particularly what can academia learn from non-academics. This is our last installment, and we're certainly excited to end on a very interesting and creative note. We have with us here Adam Bixby. He is a managing director and proactive security lead for Aon's Cyber Solutions. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with this company, they are hired in order to really hack and infiltrate organizations and show weaknesses in security systems across the board. And from what I understand, as little as I understand, I hear it's a tremendous team effort in order to do this successfully. So thank you all for joining. At this point, we will have an introduction to Adam. One important note is that he is a Rutgers alumnus. Welcome back to our university to speak to us. And we'd love to hear a little bit more about you, Adam, and the company before we kind of dive into some questions about teamwork.
Sure. Thank you, Bijou. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, so you kind of hit the nail on the head. The firm that I work for, Aon Cyber Solutions, we're kind of a small niche team as part of the global Aon organization. Aon typically is more in the insurance brokerage area, but 5 years ago, they acquired a smaller firm that I was part of. First Gotham Digital Science, and then Strauss Friedberg. And really, what you mentioned is we act like the bad guys, really. Like in essence, I would say probably for the past like maybe 20, 25 years, organizations really starting at banks have realized that, oftentimes you kind of need to act like the bad guy in order to determine, where your weaknesses are, right? So if you want to determine how somebody's going to break into your house, you obviously go around and check all the windows and doors to make sure they're locked, right? And so that's what we essentially do from a cybersecurity perspective, and actually even a physical security perspective. So, it could be, Bank A will say, hey, we need to figure out what our cyber footprint looks like. And, if you have, whether it's like, ransomware groups out there, or even potentially nation states trying to go after us and get, gain access to our crown jewels, how would they do that? So a group like mine uses the same, TTPs or tactics and procedures that the bad guys do. We mimic those exactly the same way that the bad guys do, and we see how we can kind of break in. And then, depending how large the organization is, it could be anywhere from like a week's worth of effort to could be a couple months worth of effort, really, if it's like a large firm and they want us to kind of go in any which way we could possibly think about, which I can kind of talk about in a little bit. It really depends. And, we find oftentimes very gapingly large holes in some of these organizations. We get in, we search for their crown jewels. It could be, credit card information. It could be, access to accounts payable, and cut ourselves a check, send it in the mail and be like, look, I just cut myself a check for $1 million. Or it could be access to, trade secrets. I don't know. If you're like a car manufacturer or something like that, and you're putting out a new car in a couple of years, we gain access to your latest and greatest, intellectual property. You don't want other competing firms getting access to that. You don't want other nation states potentially getting access to, maybe the latest fighter jet that some, firm is putting out, right? So that they can copy that stuff. So, we try to find that stuff first, find how we get in first, and then generate a report, present it to the key stakeholders and show them what we did, how we got in, and then we can work with their teams to kind of button up the holes that we found.
Yeah, no, fascinating. I do hope Rutgers has employed you in order to make sure that we're all
a good word.
Yeah. So before we kind of dive into the questions, can you describe what you can about your internal team, like people, not people, but more composition, how large
Sure.
it is, how you guys are organized a little bit?
Yeah, so we have a couple of groups. So we have a U.S. team. We have some folks up in Canada as well. That's kind of the group that I'm really in charge of controlling. It's around excuse me, my cat is up here. It's around about 50 people in the US and Canada is the one small pen testing team that I have. We have a group in EMEA as well, in Europe. That's another probably about like 35 to 40 people. And then we have a small team in Asia Pacific. They're in like Hong Kong and Singapore, because, you know, in reality, we are a global organization, and, you know, we could have clients all over the world looking for our services. So that's kind of it from a high level perspective. When you kind of, you know, drill down into the team that, like, say I run, you know, you have myself as kind of the lead. I kind of control the whole organization from a security testing perspective, as well as two other teams. We have an advisory team and an intelligence team. I control them as well. But you drill down into, say, the pen testing team, which is, or ethical hacking. That's another cool word that we use, just so people can understand what we do. Ethical hacking. You know, we're not bad guy hacking. We're ethical hacking. You have, you know, some vice presidents and other MDs that kind of are more like controlling the day-to-day operations. They're working with the clients, getting things organized and set up, you know, doing contracts, that kind of thing. Then kind of below them, we have directors that maybe are doing a lot of the day-to-day project management, working with the clients. And then below that tends to be our core like delivery team. And that's really when you get, when we start talking about teamwork, right? That's where it's really the most important aspect, where you have directors and managers and senior consultants, all with varying levels of skill sets, and making sure, depending on, you know, what the client is hiring us for, that we're putting the best foot forward, putting the best individuals forward for the mission, right? So I'll give you an example. We have, say, what we call a red team. Red team is basically the really the coolest job that we do. It's one of the coolest projects that you can get put on. It's like, I'll use like an old term, cloak and dagger type stuff. But this is like when literally maybe a handful of people in the organization know that we're coming. So maybe the CEO and the CFO, the guy who's paying the bill, maybe those are the only two people that know that they hired a company like Cyber Solutions, Aon Cyber Solutions, to come in and try to hack them, right? So they work with our team, and they say, we want you to find any way to break in. I don't want to let anybody else know, because I want you to act like the bad guys are. Obviously, you're not going to give your security team a heads up, right? I mean, if somebody's going to hack you, they're not telling you we're breaking in. So they try to limit the number of people that know. So then we say, all right, we'll come up with a plan. We'll do some reconnaissance, just like the military does. We do our own reconnaissance, right? We're going to see, like, you know, what does their footprint look like from a you know, a internet perspective. So we'll see, like, can we look at different registries to see what IP addresses they own? Can we, you know, do some Google searching to see like who works for the organization through like LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and start gathering, you know, what their employee list looks like, how much information is out there about them. We do all this reconnaissance and basically come up with scenarios to try to break in. So, you know, one scenario could be a phishing engagement. So probably everybody that's watching this has been, whether either they're a victim of phishing or at least have somebody try to phish them for information, maybe to try to reset their iCloud account, or to maybe reset their password for Amazon or something like that, or just basically try to get them to download something and run like a, you know, hey, your package wasn't delivered, click on this UPS thing and stuff like that. We do very sophisticated phishing like that too, but we do it against the organization, against their employees, and see if, you know, when they click on the link, it could do a number of things. It could basically redirect them to a page that we've created that's going to ask them to log in to go look at, you know, maybe a package delivery or something like that. Or maybe it's like, hey, you know, this is your W-9 form or whatever. Can you go and verify? They go in and they put their credentials in there, and now I've just captured their credentials to log into their organization. Or it could be, say, you know, download this Excel file and verify that your financials are correct so that we can pay you, or something like that. And then they click on the Excel file, and it actually runs a program on their laptop that then sends us, you know, a connection back to our command and control center, that we now have direct access to their laptop. And from there, we gain access to the internal network and start, you know, pivoting around and pilfering whatever we can internally. So that could be, say, one scenario through phishing. Another could be, you know, scanning their entire internet facing systems, maybe websites that they have, maybe email servers. maybe like SSH or FTP servers, which maybe they use to facilitate what the company does. And we try to find vulnerabilities in there. And if we can hack that, that could potentially be another way to kind of get into their internal network. And it could also be us breaking into their headquarters. So, we actually will go to a client's location. We'll often scout out if they have locations all around the country. We can kind of fly around to various locations. We do our reconnaissance. We can look to see, maybe they have a guest Wi-Fi that we can break into. And if maybe the Wi-Fi is actually also connected to their internal network. So we've done that before where they misconfigured their Wi-Fi. Or it could be just what we call tailgating our way. So, you go into a facility and you're supposed to badge access in there. We could either clone the badge from somebody else just by like bumping up to them and basically scanning their back pocket or scanning somewhere near them and clone the badge that they have that does the, swipes them through like the turnstile. We could do that, or we could basically just piggyback on somebody that's walking through and make sure that security is not watching and get into access to their internal facilities that way. And it's unfortunately, it's very common that we're able to kind of get in that way. And then once we have physical access to their location, it could be just a matter of us like walking around, looking for laptops that are wide open, plugging a little device into their laptop, sends a signal back to our command and control, and then we just walk away. And now we have access to their laptop and to their internal network. It could be also finding like a conference room that's unoccupied and planting a little device in maybe the phone system and then taping it to the bottom of the desk there. Everything that I kind of just described, from the network side to the phishing side to breaking into a person's or an organization's facility. Each one of those, if you kind of narrow it down, involves a very specific skill set that not just everybody has, right? Not a lot of people have the confidence and composure to basically fake your way and social engineer your way into a facility and not have sweat pouring down your face. And if the security guard comes up to you and asks you all sorts of questions, being able to kind of, really social engineer your way out of that situation. It takes, somebody with training and practice and knowing, what the specific things to say against the security guard or police. Sometimes we have police called on us, to make sure that, it could be a difficult situation. So that's one whole skill set. And then you have people with the technical skill sets that break into through a network. That's a whole nother skill set. And then people that can craft a really good convincing phishing emails and build payloads that would execute on somebody's laptop. That's a whole nother skill set. So, when we talk about teamwork, in order to put our best foot forward and really try our hardest to break into an organization, we have to kind of draw from various different people on the team to make sure we have the best skills prepared. And so teamwork is massively important in what we do. I can give you another kind of a cool example. Social engineering tends to be a big part of what we do. And if you're not familiar with the concept of social engineering, it's essentially taking advantage of people's human nature and convincing them to do something for you. So phishing is a good example. Another thing is called vishing, which stands for voice phishing. And that's oftentimes you'll see in, say TV and movies where you basically got on the phone call and you maybe convince help desk to, reset a password, but you're resetting somebody else's password. So you can gain access to a system that way. We do that for as part of some of the work that we do. And recently we had a member of our team. She's deaf. And so she can, she's a female, which oftentimes, the stereotype, most people hacking are men with their hoodies over and stuff like that. A lot of people will drop their guard when they have a female that's trying to take advantage of them. So that's one point that, she has an advantage over. And the fact that she's deaf is another area where people will kind of drop their guard a bit. So during an engagement recently, she was doing really, it was a Zoom phishing, if you will. I think that's a new thing, maybe zishing, I don't know. But she was doing a Zoom call with the client. Obviously, the client was not aware of what she was trying to do. And she was able to use her impairment to her advantage to basically convince the person, with her grandmother sitting right next to her. She was using her grandmother. Her grandmother had no clue what was going on. She was using her grandmother as the pretext to convince the client on the other end to give her more access and gain access to somebody else's account that she was not authorized to. And so the phishing engagement from our perspective was great, but it was a really good training example for the client, because in the end they did what they were not supposed to do, and they gave her access to records that she wasn't supposed to gain access to. So again, it's another part of teamwork, finding people that have skill sets that we need that can really be beneficial in the long run for a successful team.
Right. Yeah, so many different skills. It's really quite the composition of a team that you have to work with. It's very cool.
Yep.
So it kind of is a good segue into our first question, which is, given that there's individual skills, individual like successes, I guess, to even grow within your organization, but I guess the entire group needs to also do well and have successful campaigns. How do you kind of incentivize, individuals to work for the, good of the team, and recognize that, their own individual success will kind of follow in suit? Any particular, tips or approaches?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, I look at that as like, team success and individual success is not mutually exclusive, right? I mean, they kind of go hand in hand when it comes to like the industry that I'm in. From day one, when an employee starts working for us, we kind of give them the spiel about, this is a team, right? Like the culture that we've developed over the last 16 years since we kind of started this organization. We've fostered teamwork from the get-go, and that's not just like we talked about the different skill sets that you have, but it's also mentoring other folks on the team, right? So, you could be coming in as a young consultant, whether it's fresh out of college or maybe you only have 1 year under your belt doing this, but you have some insanely smart people that are on your team that have been doing this for years, potentially even like decades. Our culture really fosters that mentorship, like the team aspect of it, because one day you may have to have that young consultant working with you, and you want to make sure you have the best and brightest working with you, and you're not trying to basically carry them along. So it behooves everybody on our team to basically have a team, esprit de corps, if you will, a team, team mentorship. And that's built into our culture, first of all. It's also built into our goals, right? So at the beginning of every year, we set individual goals and team goals. So when we talk about team goals, mentoring is a huge aspect to that, right? So if you're a manager or director and you've been around for a long time, we're going to put goals on you about mentoring folks below you. Maybe you have a specific skill set that we don't have a lot of on the team, like, I don't know, say wireless hacking or something like that. Part of your goal could be to get like 2 mentees from our existing team and train them up to basically be as good at a specific skill set as you are. So that we can operate effectively, and you're doing, we're building a good solid team here. But on the flip side, there's also individual goals that we want to set for people too, because in the end it's also for career advancement. You want to make sure that folks in your team are able to kind of set some individual goals too. So it could be, hey, I want to put out a bunch of thought leadership this year, so maybe 5 blog posts about an area that I'm really interested in. Maybe it's like Russian ransomware, or maybe it's something like, the latest and greatest, wireless hacking techniques, or mobile phone hacking techniques, or whatever it is, doesn't really matter. They want to, just like academia, I know, like, when you're PhDs, a lot of what you guys do is putting out research papers and things like that. It's how you get grants and stuff like that. Us putting out thought leadership is just as important, because people on the team love having their name attached to some thought leadership piece. It really credentializes them in the industry. We're just like academia, where people like to have their name attached to really cool literature, right? So we foster that. We have a whole labs team that we built internally to help people put out research and development, white papers, blog posts, what have you, and people want to be involved in that. And that goes towards marketing us, really. Like if people are reading your blog and reading your white papers, they're like, hey, those guys put out some really cool research. I want to hire them to do our next, penetration test or what have you. So, being individualistic like that actually also helps us from a team aspect perspective too. So kind of boiling it down, really, it is part of the goal cycle. That's how we really, and then in the end, if you're meeting your goals, it helps you get a better bonus at the end of the year. So that's it. There's a monetary nice aspect that comes at the end of it too. So there's a lot of different rewarding things that we can kind of provide to kind of foster that teamwork as well as individual accomplishment.
Yeah, no, I love that balance, and I love the kind of right out of the gate, from the beginning of the year, setting goals as an individual and as a team. That really is, a standard practice in industry, and something that academics can certainly learn from. How do you manage, when that gets a little bit out of whack? In the case of, let's say, a star, hacker may get, a little too ambitious, a little, beyond his or her skis, and starts to impact, the rest of the team and their, kind of feeling about camaraderie. How do you manage those kind of stars, but
Can be toxic, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough balance. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, it is tough, because sometimes, like you said, sometimes you have some really smart people, their egos kind of get in the way sometimes, and it could become more of a toxic environment versus like actually being like a good mentor. So, our part of our culture, and again, I'll keep saying culture probably throughout the rest of this talk, because culture is a massive aspect of what we do to be successful. But part of that is that talent will never outweigh teamwork. It's just how we kind of look at it. Like, we can replace quality talent. Like, there's a lot. Our industry has kind of grown enough over the years where just because you're really talented at this does not mean you're not replaceable, right? And we look at having a healthy team of people that are not walking on eggshells because some really smart person on the team is just a pain in the butt to work with. Like, that's not part of our culture. So, if we do have folks on a team like that, we're going to confront them. We're going to have those courageous conversations, as they say, with them, and be like, listen, you're really making a lot of people angry. They don't want to work with you. You're not doing a good job mentoring. You're not being a team player when it comes to this. You're kind of out there for yourself. So we'll work with them. We'll coach them. Sometimes they're just not even aware of this. And when they're kind of called out on the carpet, if you will, they self-reflect and like, crap, I didn't realize this. Maybe I was just kind of in my head and I just didn't realize it. So oftentimes that's enough of a spark to get them to kind of change their behavior, and it works. It has worked in the past, and but then other times you just have somebody that is just a bit more boneheaded and maybe doesn't change. So then we'll work towards like what we call a PIP, or performance improvement plan, kind of work on that behavior from an actual paperwork perspective with HR and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if things still don't work out at that after like a PIP like that, we could show them the door. It's to be honest, it's just not really, it's not worth the time and effort and agita, if you will, to have toxic members on the team. It's, again, they're replaceable. Yeah, there may be a time period where there's going to be some catching up to do in a specific skill set area that maybe that person brings that they're really a tip of the spear on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be a blip in the radar compared to having toxic member on the team really changing the culture, and that's, again, it's not what we want.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I suspect that there's kind of a lot of even for high performers that might get go to other industries or get poached by other companies. I'm not sure about the breadth of the space here, but I imagine that there's a lot of inflow and outflow of your organization, both overproducers and underproducers. How do you deal with that aspect of maintaining that culture, but having this flux of people going in and out? And also, I mean, just staying true to the goals of your clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think that gets back to kind of like what I talked about earlier, as far as like goal setting and culture as well. But goal setting is important. We've been doing this long enough where we kind of realize that you don't want to have a single point of failure, right? So, for example, you have somebody that's really great on the team at a specific type of testing. I'll use mobile application pen testing as an example, right? It's a very niche skill set. We do a lot of it, but sometimes there's some nuance and some that you really need to learn. It's not something that you could just train somebody, overnight on, right? It could take several months to potentially years to train somebody to be really good at it. And so we've learned over the years through trial and error that those are areas that we want to make sure you have a nice bench, a nice stable bench of folks on the team that can do that kind of work. And that goes for a lot of the other types of skills that we have. so that if there is attrition, people kind of coming and going, maybe their heart's not in doing pen testing anymore. Maybe they want to go be like a chief security officer somewhere, so they leave and they go somewhere else because they've kind of want to get out of the technical space. And they're bringing with them some really good skill sets in, say, mobile. Through the years, and part of goal setting is hopefully we've been able to backfill and train up folks underneath them that will kind of step in and fill that void, so that with the ebb and flow of folks kind of coming and going, at least the type of services that we can offer doesn't dip, right? A client comes to us for a mobile engagement. We have a great superstar that just left, but we have another young superstar that's kind of coming right in and able to kind of, backfill the work that they do. And that's also part of when I say goal setting is that we realize the work we get in a lot, and we want to make sure we have a really solid bench to fill that work. And that becomes part of the goal. Like, you have a young consultant, hey, you've shown interest in mobile pen testing. This year, you're going to do some training. We're going to send you to some of the best training out there for mobile pen testing, and you're going to be a superstar in our team. And we could set that early. We could pay for their training. We could do some in-house training as well. And so if somebody leaves, they're our new go-to, like, a mobile pen tester.
And just on that note, is it very common for, let's say, lateral skill development? Like, let's say I'm a digital hacker, but I want to learn social engineering. Is that something that your company provides a lot of?
Absolutely. People love to have broad skill sets, from the social side to the very deep technical side. We totally foster that. We kind of tell people, yeah, you could be the greatest technical person, but you're also really good with the soft skills. You should learn some training, get some social engineering training. We recently just hired, early this year, somebody. She comes from the government, one of the premier, intelligence organizations, and she's an expert in social engineering. So she's going to be doing a lot of training for some of our young, talented folks that want to get into that area, teaching them the cues of, what to look for when you're trying to, get somebody to do something for you that they really normally wouldn't. And so I'm really glad we brought her in. She's fantastic. And we've had some other people on the team that are really good at that as well. It is an interesting area, social engineering, because you think of the stereotypical nerd hacker, if you will. They like to kind of sit in their basement and just hack away at stuff. And that is a stereotype for a reason. There are some people that are on our team that are just like that they never want to face a client ever because they don't have the social skills. But then there's others that are, like, amazingly social, really good technically and amazingly social. Those are the ones that were like, you're going to be a great social engineer one day. We're going to get you breaking into every org out there because you're really good at this. And so just with the right skill sets, the right, knowing what to do in uncomfortable situations, can turn them into, like, really great team members.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like you have a deep understanding of your team and what they're looking for and how to match that with your company client needs and goals.
Yeah.
So that's a powerful force. I'm out of curiosity. I mean, I imagine that the topics that you have to focus on or the goals for your company are ever evolving, given just the ever changing landscape of security. How do you stay ahead of it? Is it more that I'm assuming that some of these companies don't even know what they need to be secure sometimes? Like, so is it part of your responsibilities as a as a leader in an organization to be thinking way ahead and communicating that vision internally?
Absolutely. We have to be, in order to be a premier organization like we are, you have to be at the tip of the spear, right? You have to be monitoring, what's going on in the real world. We're monitoring what the bad guys are doing so that we can change and modify our tactics and techniques and procedures to that, so that we're mimicking what the bad guys are doing. And it is funny that sometimes what the bad guys and good guys are doing kind of merge, right? So the bad guys are actually looking at the same blog posts that I'm reading every day, and they're learning new techniques. And what research is going on out there, the bad guys are studying up on that the same way that we are. So it is a cat and mouse game. We're using the same stuff. They're using it for bad. We're using it for good. But you're right. We have to stay up on our skills that way. And basically, our clients look at us as trusted advisors, right? They're saying, like, what are the latest techniques that the bad guys are doing? And if we don't know that, they're going to just go to another firm that has a better understanding of that. So we have to be able to speak to that to our clients and then basically tell them, listen, this is what the bad guys are doing right now. You need us to kind of mimic that in your environment so we can catch it before, before the bad guys do. And through that, long lasting relationships that we built with them, they say, yes, absolutely, let's do that, because they trust us that we've been doing this with them for a long time. We've never let them down. And again, it gets back to your initial question. It's because we do our homework, we do our research. We're part of that research. Like, I mentioned earlier, like people are putting out blog posts and R&D. We're part of that ever growing cycle of looking for new techniques. And the more techniques that we can put out there and we can train other, good guys on, and bad guys, but good guys on, the better we can get ahead of the curve and the better we can, educate our clients on what they need in order to protect themselves.
And it sounds like communications, both internally and externally, is critical for this. And so I wanted to learn a little bit more about, any kind of skills and techniques, tips that you might have on, communicating, particularly when it comes to, things like conflict resolution, problems that might happen internally in the team, or even externally with your clients, like, any kind of do's and don'ts that you've come across in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, communication is key, right? I mean, it's conflict resolution, or I could also say change management. So it could be just like maybe some new like changes that are coming down from, like, I call it the mothership, Aon. If there's stuff coming down that's going to affect like the team that may be negative, sometimes, usually it's positive, but sometimes negative. The way you kind of address the team is definitely super important. And we've learned that, through the years of delivering messages, what works, what doesn't work, what resonates, what doesn't resonate. So, it could be maybe a change or is coming that maybe the team's not gonna like. And we'll look at it as a leadership perspective, and we'll overanalyze what's going to happen. I mean, when I say overanalyze, we're dealing with a team of very smart people, 50 people that their job is to be attention to detail, to be super nitpicky at everything they look at, because that's just the nature of what they do. So we have to approach change. We have to approach any kind of potential negative situation that's going to be coming down with the same level of a detail, and analyze it the same way they would, so that I want to put myself in their shoes. I want to say, well, what is the change? What kind of questions are they going to ask me, or what do I think their response will be to this this negative feedback that maybe I'm providing back to them, and then figure out like what their response will be, and then maybe I want to make sure that I'm prepared for that. I've created or developed answers in my head to their response, thinking like, hey, I'm in my shoes. What kind of questions are they going to ask? I better have an answer for it and not go humana. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I better have an answer. And that really is super helpful to basically just don't go in there guns a-blazing, say something and then walk away. You have to make sure that there's going to be some dialogue going on there. And it also gets back to, how do I want to deliver this message? Do I want to do this to the whole team at like an all hands meeting? Or do I want to have individual one-on-one conversations? So this actually happened recently. We've had some org change. It was for the positive, but when people looked at it initially, it could have come out as seemingly negative. And it affected everybody on the team a little bit differently. So we decided as a leadership group, we are not going to do an all hands, just tell everybody about the change and like leave people like questioning like, how the hell does this affect me? Excuse my language. So we decided to have an individual one-on-one conversation with every person on the team. We did the metrics on exactly how it was going to affect them, and we prepped really, really hard on it. And then when we had those meetings and we had great responses for every single question that they had, it went over amazingly well. The responses, the feedback was really good. They said, hey, you guys, it looks like you had really thought about this. This looks like it's actually going to be better for me in the future. I appreciate the fact that you actually went through this analysis. And yeah, it's a bit of a pain because it's a lot of upfront work. But in the end, I kind of get back to culture. It's what's best for our culture. We want to be transparent. We want to be communicative. We don't want to just lie to people, because people won't trust leadership if they say one thing and then, a couple months down the road, they're learning that it's something else entirely. We want to be as upfront and positive and transparent as we can, and have thought about all the potential negative ramifications and have actually addressed it. So maybe it's addressing the solution right away, knowing that that's going to be something that's going to bubble up a couple, months down the road.
Right.
So
That's great.
I guess to answer your question, it depends.
Yeah. Well, no, that example of conflict resolution, really having a crystallized plan, putting yourself in their shoes. I mean, these are certainly skills that, we all could adopt, academic or not. So
Yeah.
I love that stuff. You mentioned one of this word trust, I guess from the employee standpoint and trusting the leadership. It kind of dovetails with a question Dr. Reichman posted about, have you ever had someone on your team who turned out to be a bad guy? And to maybe expand on the essence of the question, how do you generate trust to your team members and maybe vice versa? It sounds like the latter you covered by just being a good leader and showing that you care broadly about them and the organization. But how about the other way?
Yeah. So I mean, to answer that question, I mean, we've thank God, and I'm knocking on wood right now, we've never actually had anybody that we've hired that ended up being a bad guy. I know it has happened in the industry before. There was a good book out there called Kingpin, I think it's called, and it was about a guy who I forget his name actually. He was in the industry, the ethical hacking, pen testing industry, and he was at nighttime, he was one of the leading like credit card hackers ever. Like millions and millions of credit cards stolen by his group and all that kind of stuff. And so he was masquerading as a bad guy at the same time contributing to the what we call the white hat, good guy industry. But he was really a black hat. He was a bad guy in disguise. But it is pretty rare. I mean, most people, most people in our industry do have morals. I mean, there's, some people, like I said, like may have bad guys. It's never happened to my group. We have had, I will say, people that kind of skirted before they joined us, skirted that kind of gray line, if you will. So you have like white hats, which is what we do. White hat, good guys. Gray hats are kind of skirting that like legal, illegal. And sometimes it's easy to cross that line and you're not even realizing it. And then you have the bad guys, the people that just in the end are like the ones out there working for like the ransomware, mafia organizations, or just doing this, hacking into stuff, knowing that what they're doing is totally illegal. We have had people in the past that, when we did background checks and stuff like that, they came back as, having, maybe been arrested and stuff like that in the past, or maybe like decades ago. And, but, we do full background checks and stuff like that. And it really depends on the situation. And talking with our legal and stuff like that, like how long ago was it, how bad was it, have they shown like good work ethic and have kind of kept their nose clean. Maybe it was something they did when they were like 13 or something like that, and they've been good since then. And maybe we'll roll the dice on them, that we'll be careful, or maybe we just won't hire them. It is definitely something that doesn't happen often. It's come up maybe once or twice in the 16, 17 years that I've been doing this. So it's not something that often happens. But that's what good background checks are for. And it's also, we keep each other honest too, where I'll say the word culture again, but it is part of our culture. Like we're all working and helping each other out. And oftentimes, sometimes bad guys, they do it just because it's that itch that they need to scratch, right? Like hacking is a really fun thing to do. And if they can do it and get paid really well, I mean, to be honest, like there's the salaries and stuff like that are people that are making in this industry are really good. And so if they can do it and do it legally and still scratch that itch, they have no problem working for an ethical organization like what we do. And I would say that if any bad guys are watching this, come to the good side. We could scratch that itch for you.
That's great. Come to the right side of the force.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. We'll be like Luke Skywalker.
I'm curious, when you're, first interviewing a new team member, and, getting to know him or her, are there any Adam Bixby questions? Like, how do you kind of get a sense of who they are, or again, whether you can work with them specifically, or develop kind of the right.
Yeah, I mean, we do put our employees through, we'll call it gauntlet. It's a pretty tough interview process, and that's on purpose, right? I mean, we kind of like to look at ourselves as like the Green Berets or Navy SEALs of an industry, where we have a high attrition rate when you're going through our interview process. I think we I think we've done the research, and it's maybe like, 4 to 5% of the people that we interview actually ever get hired for us. And so, that's essentially thousands of people we've interviewed over the years to only have like a team to say 50 right now, right? So
Right, yeah.
it is a pretty, so there is a gauntlet they go through, and they go through at least 4 to 5 people are going to be having interviewed that one person at one point in time during the process. And it starts with relatively basic skill sets that we're looking for from a technical knowledge perspective, as well as a soft skills perspective. At one point that we have them doing an actual practical exam, if you will. Like we set up a website that they have to hack. We want to make sure technically if they're able to find the vulnerabilities that we've kind of baked into the application. So that's one, testing them technically, and then at the end they have to build a report that's going to come to us, and we pretend to be the client, and we have to see what their writing skills are, because in the end the client is paying us for a report, a really good detailed report on how to how we were able to break in and what they need to fix, right? So if they can't get their thoughts across properly and basically dumb it down, right? I mean, the way I'm kind of dumbing down with some of the technical stuff that we do, the members on our team need to be able to do that as well to the client, so that really the impact of what we found can kind of get across, and we can tell them this is critical. You need to fix this immediately, because I wouldn't be surprised if a bad guy's already in on your network right now. That's how bad this is, right? And so they need to have those soft skills to kind of get that communication across the client. So that's a big part of our interview process as well, right? And so in the end, when maybe myself kind of gets involved in the interview process, I'm not looking for just credentials on a resume, right? Some industries maybe look at that way. Hey, we look at your resume and you've done a lot of computer science classes and things like that, and you got a 4.0 across the board and stuff like that. But a lot of people can do that, right? A lot of people can get can get straight A's in class and do really well in the workload that they did in college or what have you. But there's that certain like spark, je ne sais quoi, if you will, that we look for in somebody that's coming to our team, that has like the drive, right? And its drive is kind of hard to put on a resume, but you can kind of, when you see it in an interview, you kind of know, right? They just ooze this passion for security testing, for pen testing, and you ask them the question and they go into really detailed answers, and you're like, I know they get it, and I know they're going to work really hard at what they do. It's kind of hard. It's a bit of an art, to be honest. It's hard for me to kind of describe what it is, but you've seen a lot of people like that in your life and in this industry to know like when somebody has it, when somebody doesn't. Like I've interviewed people that have every certification under the sun, did amazing in college, and they were a dud when I interviewed them. There was just no passion there. It was just basically they went through the rigor to get the job, and I'm like, I can't work with this person. They're not culturally a fit for our org. And others have, they were like, went to a community college, did pretty well and all kind of stuff, but they did like built home labs, and they joined all these competitions, captured the flag competitions, and stood up, clubs and stuff like that, and invite a lot of people from around the area, and we're hosting, chapter meetings for the local, like, security club and stuff like that. That's the person I'm looking for. They're a self-starter. They're doing the extra mile beyond just, buying certs and buying a degree. They're doing the extra stuff that we're looking for. That's the spark that I'm looking for, that I know would be, he's the one that wants to put out that cool blog post that's going to get a lot of traction. He's the one that's going to go the extra mile during a red team engagement or a penetration test. So it's you kind of just need to be around those types of people to kind of know what that personality looks like. And I think it's worked really well for us. I think a lot of the people on the team that we've gotten know what that spark looks like as well. And we've been able to really use that to our advantage in hiring some really awesome talent.
Yeah, no, I think hunger sounds
hunger,
like
yeah,
and
absolutely.
enthusiasm, yeah, no, it's great. We see folks like that too. We don't get 1,000 applications to our job post, but I think that the personality that does well on these almost self-starting kind of
Yeah.
fields. That it's great to find them. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Adam, you sound like a really fantastic leader. I almost feel safe that a guy like you is out there looking at companies. But what are the most difficult challenges that you come across as as a leader, and especially in with such a diverse group of people?
Well, I mean, I think you hit it right. Diverse group of people. That with it comes as challenges, right? I mean, humans are humans. Even though we develop this culture of inclusivity, of teamwork, of mentorship, and all that kind of stuff, humans are going to be humans, right? There's always going to be challenges when it comes to that, and so it's navigating that sometimes bumpy waters of humans interacting with humans. Type A personalities interacting with type A personalities. Sometimes type A personalities domineering a type B type personality, and that potential dynamic. Also, very analytical people analyzing every decision that you make. It's challenging. So it's really the human aspect is probably the toughest part of it. I was a psych major at Rutgers, so I would say that's probably helped me train me to understand some of the nuance of human behavior and some of the potential, red flags to look for and stuff like that. And I think it's suited me really well over the years. But it really is the human nature that's probably the hardest part of what we do, because in the end, I can, like I said, I can scratch that itch from a technical perspective. I can get people put on some really awesome projects. We just have a really great talent base, a really great client base. But sometimes it's really the human aspect that can be bothersome. But I think for the most part, culture really has helped in that area where you kind of find relatively early on people that are kind of anti to our culture, if you will, and we can suss that out pretty quickly. And again, through coaching and stuff like that, we can kind of get them on track. And again, like I said, if they're not culturally a good fit after a while, we can kind of essentially manage them out, as they say. So, but again, that does oftentimes create the most heartache that I have. It's the human element is that's oftentimes what keeps me up at night, knowing like there's potential like personality issues on the team. I'm there as the leader of the practice. I feel like that's my biggest duty, is to make sure that we can have a cohesive team that can do, put the best foot forward for our clients. And if we're having personality issues, that's really oftentimes what I lose sleep over when those types of issues pop up. And so I have a really great management team underneath me, and we all we put our heads together to come up with the best solutions that we can for any kind of personality conflicts that come up.
I was glad to hear that Rutgers University and the psych department served you well.
Yes, they did.
Some skills, some mechanisms to deal with the leadership that you have to display.
Yeah.
Any other kind of resources or disciplines or I don't know, experiences that you've had that have impacted your leadership style, and like books or things like that you might kind of
so I mean, I was actually working at Rutgers when 9/11 happened, and I joined the Air Force Reserve, right? During that, I felt like I needed to kind of do some duty, my duty to my country. So I joined the Air Force. I joined as a police officer, like what they call security forces in the Air Force. I would say some of that, not some of that, a lot of that actually did help me from a good leadership perspective. There's some really good leaders in the Air Force, and you learn to deal with some very strong personalities in the military, and going through some of that, the rigorous training that I kind of went through, I would say really helped me out. Now, I'm not saying everybody that wants to get into this industry needs to join the military, not at all. But I would say as part of a leadership perspective, I would say it was very helpful. I learned really good leaders and really terrible leaders in the Air Force, and I knew how not to treat folks that are underneath you and how to treat folks that are underneath you. I know what worked. I learned what worked. I learned what didn't work, and I try to use that daily to think about like how I'm going to tackle a specific leadership challenge that I have coming up. Beyond that, I don't know. I think a lot of the military and really just psychology training at Rutgers really kind of helped, and also my parents were great. I think they kind of taught me the morals and stuff like that I have and all that kind of stuff, and some of the social skills that I have. I think a lot of that just kind of came from just watching my parents growing up and seeing how they reacted. I would say if you want to kind of get into this industry outside of being a leader, but you want to actually be a really good hacker, you know, going to college and getting, a degree in, computer science or something like that is definitely helpful. But I wouldn't say it's always mandatory. Like I said, I mean, I didn't study computer science at Rutgers. I was a psychology major, and I got a certificate in criminology, and I got a minor in anthropology. I mean, nothing in that says anything about computer hacking, right? I did get a master's in computer forensics, but that was like years down the line and stuff like that, and didn't really fully set me up for this position. A lot of it was self-study. Like I was speaking with a buddy who got me into this. The funny story is like we were out at, it was one of the, what was it? We were back during during Thanksgiving break that Rutgers had. He went to Notre Dame, and he was working at Ernst & Young as an intern there, and he was telling me what he was doing. And I was like, I don't know if anybody watching this has ever seen the movie Sneakers with Robert Redford, a great movie. Oh, yeah. But yeah, he essentially described what he did is like, that's what I'm like, that's a job. You can actually do that. That's not just from the Sneakers movie or whatever. He's like, no, it's a great job. So that kind of sparked my interest in this field. Like, you can get paid to be like the bad guys. I'm like, that's really cool. And so, using that as a guide, like I went and did a lot of self-study. I taught myself programming languages. I got some good advice from the guys that are doing it, like, what I should be looking at, like, what do you need to know in order to break stuff, right? So you need to know how to build to break oftentimes. So learning programming languages, setting up like network stuff in my house to learn how networks work, computer networks work, so that I can go and take advantage and break them, right? A lot of the resources that they have online nowadays didn't exist, 17, 18 years ago when I was just getting into this field. But there's tons of resources out there online that you can kind of look up. There's websites that are designed for you to learn how to break into them. Like, you could just go online and say, they give you all sorts of challenges, and like they get harder and harder as they go. And that's essentially what they're doing, is that's what we do every day. We're breaking into these websites and stuff like that, and they train you on how to do that. There's organizations out there like OWASP, which is OWASP, Open Web Application Security Project. Tons of information on there on the most common vulnerabilities that we find at within clients, and what they are, and they dive deep into what the vulnerabilities are, and how to actually exploit them in the real world, and how to fix them in the real world too. Because we not only just break stuff, we also tell our clients how to fix it as well, right? We're part of that consulting aspect of it. A lot of great resources online, and then there's certification programs that you can go, like the offensive security certificates and stuff like that out there. There's just lots of great resources out there online. Reddit, if people know the website Reddit, there's NetSec, NETSEC, lots of good information on there. There's a cybersecurity subreddit that they give a lot of good advice and stuff like that on there. There's a whole wiki on there, and like what certificates are great to look at, what online resources are great to kind of study. I would say just try to do it all. Again, like I said earlier, like when I'm interviewing somebody, a lot of the extracurricular stuff that you do, and the self-startedness, if you will, I don't think that's a word, but I just made it up. The self-startedness of your personality is gonna win me over during an interview, more so than any certification that you have, to be honest. It's really that drive. I ask you a question, and you can scratch below the surface, and you can really understand a topic really, really well. I don't care if you got your master's at Harvard or something like that. If you can't really fully understand the full details of the question I'm asking you, I don't have time for you. I want the person that like understands it to the core. That's the type of person I'm looking at, because they ooze the passion for it.
Well, you oozed a lot of passion today. Thank you so much for sharing all your stories and experiences about teamwork, and I don't know where I can sign up, but I'd love to join your team. This sounds like
send me your resume, Bijou.
Yeah. All right. Dr. Ekman, any last parting questions?
No, thank you. That was fascinating, and it's refreshing to hear that you care more about what people know and what they're passionate about than what degrees they have. And it's really refreshing, because a lot of the world doesn't work that way.
No, you're right. You're right. And I've learned that through trial and error, right? I mean, like you you could see the degrees and you realize this person is, I don't care about these degrees. I care about that spark,
Right, they know how to take structured classes and get a good grade.
That's exactly right. Yeah, a lot of people could do that. Yeah.
And some people can't do that, but they're really smart.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. It's true.
Yeah,
Very
that
true.
was really cool.
Yeah, great.
Well, thanks for being with us again, Adam, and
course.
congratulations on all your success. And I
Thank you.
mean, I obviously
Yeah.
wish all the best for the
Absolutely.
organization and all your projects. So
Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me. Yep. Thank you.